American refugee. Refugee, we've been talking for the better part of 2 hours, and we haven't talked about anything. Now, but before we get started, I've just been informed in the chat that Tammy, who is often with us here during our live events, her mother has been ill since we have first known her, but apparently things have taken kind of a turn for the worst.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay, no sound. No sound.
No sound from me?
No, I'm getting a message. No sound. Give me a second. Oh, okay. No, I'm being told that's corrected. Thank you for that. The chat is several seconds behind, or what they're seeing, and I'm making changes on the fly. We'll get it right. We're learning. But anyway, Tammy's mother has apparently taken a turn for the worst, and I think she's either on her way there or preparing to be on her way to visit with her mother. So let's please remember Tammy and her mother in your prayers, and we hope that everything will be normal there. Roger,
Mark,
we're using a new feature here, and I'm very pleased to announce that it's working. I did not even know that this feature existed when I got this professional version of the software, which I have been showing you for years and years and years. And I think if I look up there, you're actually up there. Hey, Roger. This is like the Brady Bunch.
I'm having from my end, Mark. It's just one little problem. I don't quite know how to adjust my camera, because in the postage stamp size of my thing of myself that I see up in the right-hand corner of my screen and the bigger thing in the middle, my position is quite different. And one I'm perfectly centered, and the other I'm almost off the screen to the right.
Okay, check the big one is the one you want to be concerned with, but we're not going to change it now. Believe me, you are. That's fine. We'll just keep playing with it. But anyway, we're experimenting with some of the new features, and I'm learning. I mean, there is a lot to learn. This is very powerful software, and I'm trying to employ some things that are a little bit out of the box, that are not directly addressed in the documentation. But this is it's just going to take a while, folks. But anyway, Roger, thanks for being the guinea pig tonight. I was trying to line up somebody else to do this last night, but you didn't answer the phone.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, okay. But I presume that you have some stuff for us, and tell me what's going on out there, and I'll be glad to comment on it.
Well, Mark, a little bit of a difficult subject tonight that I want to talk about. It's always a difficult subject to talk about whenever we talk about the subject of abortion. It's never a happy topic, and there's some other things that make it difficult for me. And we've kind of talked about some of what we're going to hit on before, about when certain legislation is proposed and this and that, because sometimes I differ from some other pro-lifers, and you do too, in that I'm very unwilling to compromise on a lot of these things. Okay, to me, there's no compromise with evil. The slaughter of unborn children is wrong, and so lots of times when certain bills are being proposed or so on and so forth, there might be certain exceptions for rape or incest, and there's always the argument of, well, if we can just save some lives, and I respect that argument when people put forth that argument. But I actually feel like we kind of devalue life when we put those things into these pro-life bills. Okay.
Well, can I dig a little deeper in that? If I keep your thought.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I was actually on the board of directors of a crisis pregnancy ministry, and a law in Florida was being passed basically to complicate the abortion process, where you had to get an ultrasound, you had to cooling off, basically to put some hurdles between the decision to have an abortion and actually having it. Okay.
Yeah, and those things do save lives.
Exactly. And this is what we struggled with because we were being asked to join in and support this bill for that reason. It would result in the saving of lives. But here's what we did. We met and we met and met and prayed. And I remember the senior member of our board just kind of said that there is no justifiable reason to have an abortion. The problem with supporting a bill with these compromises in it spiritually is, in other words, if you support that bill, think about this, Roger. What you're saying is, as long as you jump through all these hoops, it's okay. That is the spiritual problem with supporting a bill that would in fact save lives. Now, how then do we reconcile that you didn't act to save lives? Here's how I personally did it in my own heart. I am going to be held in account for my vote on the board of directors whether to support or not support this bill. I will stand before God and have to give an account of that. I will not have to give an account of any decision that anybody else makes regarding their own conduct.
Right.
And that's how I said, okay, no. In fact, now, so let's flip the coin. The other side is, if you don't compromise, you'll never get any bill passed.
Oh, and not only you never get any bill passed, but sometimes for some legislators, if they don't compromise, they won't get reelected because a bill will be seen as being a very pro-life bill, and they'll be seen as going against the pro-life movement. Mark, I had a good friend, Woody Jenkins, in the state of Louisiana, and he ran for United States. He was in the state legislature for many, many years. He ran for the United States Senate actually 3 times, and in one of those occasions really won, but lost due to voter fraud. But I remember when Louisiana was debating a partial birth abortion ban, and he was just agonizing over it. Okay, and I talked to him about it because he said, he said, if I vote against this bill's going to pass, and he said, if I vote against this bill, people in my church and people in the pro-life movement are not going to understand how in the world I could possibly vote against this bill to ban partial birth abortion. And he said, here in the state of Louisiana, he said, but here's my problem. Aside from the one that we already talked about of any compromise, he said, Roger, there's only a couple of methods that they use to kill babies in the last trimester. Mm-hmm. And as visually horrific and as horrific as it is to our thoughts, what they do with a partial birth abortion, a saline solution abortion is actually going to cause the child more suffering.
Yeah.
And so, he was really struggling, really agonizing and really praying about what to do, with his vote on this bill. Mm-hmm. And so this has always been very complicated. And I've always been quick to forgive people who I'm convinced are very legitimately pro-life for exactly what side they come down, on some of these things, because it's debatable. It's debatable. I know that even when they put in the 24-hour waiting period, that abortion rates go down simply because mm-hmm. it's such an emotional decision for a woman to make to have an abortion that if she has to go home and wait for 24 hours, then come mm-hmm. back and get the abortion, half the time they change their mind.
Right.
So these things can save lives. But now, Mark, we're having to look at these bills in a whole new way, because I'm going to tell you what's happening right now because of the makeup of the Supreme Court. Kennedy has been replaced. Nobody for sure knows how Kavanaugh is going to vote. And Ginsburg might be dying, okay? And Trump might even get another Supreme Court pick. And what's going on right now is that in pro-life states, they are passing competing bills at various levels of restriction to try and get Roe v. Wade overturned, to try and test the limits of how far is this court going to let us go.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, on the pro-abortion side, they're terrified about Roe v. Wade being overturned. and they are doing their best in their states to absolutely codify it into law, into their states.
Well,
So
let me
that-
ask you a question, because I know that the conversation around what's going on or has been going on in New York, one of the thoughts that crossed my mind that I never really heard echoed in social media or elsewhere is, you're exactly right. They are trying to codify everything and solidify their position. But New York took it so far, I was about to say, if you just would have left things the way it was, you might be okay, but you pushed it too far, and it may backfire.
It may. Winston Churchill, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, said, well, this certainly simplifies things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, he wasn't happy that Pearl Harbor had been attacked and that American lives had been lost, but he knew, okay, finally the Americans are actually going to enter the war now.
Yeah.
And that's finally going to happen. And Virginia essentially just attempted to do the same thing that New York has done. And the bill fortunately failed in Virginia. And before I get into some of these specifics, though, Mark, we're in a whole new world now, where now what we have to realize is, okay, let's separate it out. Let's not even use the word abortion right for a minute. At what point are we going to make it legal to kill living human beings in the United States of America? Okay? Because the fact of the matter is, that is a point that gets debated. For example, most of us are in favor of being able to kill another living human being in direct defense of our own life. Somebody's broken into our home, they're attempting to kill us. We have the right to shoot them and defend their lives. So that's an area where we have a right to kill another human being. It gets more debatable when you get into the issue of capital punishment. And I know that some people, maybe even you, I know that some people who are in theory in favor of capital punishment in some situations so distrust government and have been so disturbed by some of the DNA evidence that has disproven people being convicted that they're now opposed on the basis of, look, we're just killing too many innocent people.
That is my basis for objecting to capital punishment, because there have been cases where the convicted person could not possibly have actually done it based on new DNA evidence. So the judicial system, although probably the best in the world, is not perfect. It relies upon judgment calls by jurors and judgment calls by judges, thus the word judge. So I've always thought to myself, God knows, and we'll let God sort it out, but we don't need to send him to God prematurely. So as a conservative, it's a little bit unusual to find people like myself that actually oppose capital punishment. Now, a lot of times when I bring this up in conservative circles, well, they say, well, what are we supposed to do? Feed and house them and take care of them forever? Well, that's an economic argument. Wait a minute.
That's right. Well, and there's another thing, too. Before we get into all of that, I mean, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but, nobody ever said, I don't know when we got to the point where we had to be giving open heart surgery and gender reassignment surgery, and where we had to be spending the amount of money that we're spending on convicts. I mean, you can give convicts a decent life that's humane for a whole lot less expensively than we're doing it right now.
Right.
Okay. So that's a whole thing. But Mark, society is getting harder. Satan is infiltrating us more and more. And when you look at a bill, because let's talk about some of the places the New York bill went. First of all, the New York bill used the word health and not the word life in terms of legalizing last trimester abortions throughout the entire trimester, including when the woman is dilating, okay, and in labor. Okay, so they use the word if it's in the best interest of the health. Now, the courts have already ruled that whenever they say health and not life, that can be mental health, that can be emotional health.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm traumatized.
The New York bill does is it says that they were going to begin to train non-medical doctor abortionists to make this decision. and to do these abortions. So it wasn't even going to be medical doctors doing it anymore. Okay, they're going to open up the abortion industry to more and more people. And they also, in that bill, specifically removed some things in New York law, which required the life-saving medical care of babies that are born alive during abortions. Yes, this happens. Some people don't like to think about the fact that it happens. One of the most powerful pro-life testimonies anybody can ever see is if you look up Gianna Jessen on YouTube and look at some of her videos. She's a survivor of a last trimester abortion. She has cerebral palsy because of it. And she's a beautiful Christian woman that has a very, very, very powerful testimony. But so in New York, you're going to have women deciding with the help of their non-medical doctor abortionists that it's in the best interest of their health to have a last trimester abortion after they're already in labor. And if they don't succeed in killing the baby before it comes out alive, they're just going to kill it when it's lying on the table. Okay. That's not even abortion anymore, Mark. That's just murder.
It's genocide.
That's just non-abortionary murder. It's post-birth murder.
Right.
And Virginia almost passed a bill. And let me say something, because I'm ashamed of the fact that the archbishops in my church have gotten so weak. A couple of bishops have called for the excommunication of Cuomo, and I'm a Catholic, so this means something to me. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, well, what does Cuomo care if he gets excommunicated? Let me tell you something. Just like a lot of the people in the time of Jesus, just like a lot of those Pharisees, who cares about being the honored guest? Como likes to go to Mass, and Como likes to go to these Catholic functions and wear a big sash that says honored guest and things like that. And he likes to even use moral and Christian arguments in favor of some of his more socialist policies. And yeah, I'm of the opinion that the church doesn't do the image of the church any good. It doesn't do the soul of the person any good when it allows them to pretend like they're acting like a Christian and continue to be a part of the church when they're advocating this type of this type of murder. And so it's something that we're going to have to look at very carefully on a state-by-state basis, and what types of protections we're going to try to put in place to save these kids. In Virginia, the governor in Virginia gave some absolutely disgusting testimony, where he absolutely admitted that if the child came out alive, well, it would be up to the mother and the doctor at that point to decide. Certainly the fetus would be made comfortable, and he still used the word fetus for some reason, and which it wasn't. It's not even in the, it's a baby.
Well, actually, I do not object to his use of the extrauteral fetus reference, because that means it's a human. And it was a fetus before, it's a fetus afterwards, it's a human afterwards, it's got to be a human before. I kind of like that.
Right. But, he acts like, well, no, this is a very painful decision that has to be made between the mother and the doctor and so on and so forth, and whether you're going to save or, and then he tried to use the word resuscitate. Well, what's next, Mark? A woman has a 72-hour time period to decide. She's got 3 days to decide whether or not she's going to kill her child after birth. At what point are we ever going to cut this off? Another thing that irritates me about this whole argument about medically necessary abortions, which is almost entirely completely false. But people that don't pay a lot of attention to the issue, they think it's serious, and they think, oh my God, these pro-lifers want women to die. No, we don't. But Mark, I have studied the issue, and I've read many doctors. There's no such thing as a medically required last trimester abortion ever, because every single method of abortion that can be done in the last trimester is more dangerous than either doing a cesarean section and having a live birth, or simply inducing labor and having a live birth. You can do a partial birth abortion. You've got to go in, you've got to turn that baby around, make that baby come out breached. If you're going to do a saline solution abortion, you've got to fill the uterus with saline first and allow a bunch of time to pass for that baby to die before you induce labor. If you're going to do what's called a hysterotomy abortion, well, the only difference between that and hysterectomy is that you have to kill the baby and delay to kill the baby and make sure the baby's dead before you remove the baby. So in terms of last trimester abortions, there's never a reason. There might be a reason to terminate a pregnancy early and to have a live birth, and it might even increase the chance of survival for the child in some instances. Now, in terms of earlier than the last trimester, much more unusual than people think. But even if we were going to allow it legally, and we were going to say, okay, a woman has the right, when there's a medical problem, to choose to terminate her pregnancy, why does terminating the pregnancy automatically have to mean killing the baby? Mm-hmm. Viability is getting earlier and earlier and earlier now. 24-week survivals are getting pretty common. I think the all-time record now is like 19 weeks. That's very, 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 very rare. But if the unborn child is given the same rights as the mother in that situation, then each life would be equal, and you would remove the child in whatever way was most likely to save the life of the child, and do everything that you could do to care for the child, save the child. So Mark, these health and life arguments are absolutely bogus.
And try to make it simple, okay? These pregnancies are portrayed as traumatic. You know, when they talk about the health of the mother, Mom, you're not diseased, you're pregnant. Okay?
Right, you don't comparison.
Pregnancy is not a medical malfunction. It is not a disease. It is the normal outcome. You know, so, or not normal, I guess. It is a reasonable outcome of the choices you make. So I don't understand, you know, the wailing and the screaming, and this gets attention. Okay, we saw this happening when Kavanaugh was being confirmed by the Senate. You've got people wailing and screaming and talking about rape and incest and these bizarre cases. Mm-hmm. And I like what you said earlier, that quoting Churchill. Let's simplify it, okay? Mm-hmm. You're pregnant. If rape or incest, I mean, I could even make the argument that that is no reason or justification for abortion.
It isn't. I actually used to know a young woman, and she wrote an article for a blog site that I used to do. But I used to know a young woman who went through a very difficult process, wrote an article about it, and she talked about it. In her case, she'd been raped, but it was a date rape situation. And it was on, I don't remember if it was the first or second date with this guy, but let's just say she was a troubled girl, and they were dating. And she didn't report the crime immediately, and she would not have made a credible witness or anything like that. So there was no charge of rape, although she was actually raped and quite traumatized by it. She told me that when she found out she was pregnant, and the doctor just assumed that she was going to have an abortion. Okay, just made that assumption and acted shocked when she was like, "No, I don't think I'm going to do that." Things were complicated further in her case. She was bipolar, and she was on bipolar medication. And the doctor, in trying to talk her into the abortion, told her that if she went off of her bipolar medication, she was likely to go completely crazy and miscarry anyway. And if she continued to take her bipolar medication, that was going to cause birth defects. Even her mother, who had been previously always pro-life, tried to talk her into an abortion. Now, thank God in her case, she ended up driving out of state, meeting some wonderful people at a church, and getting taken care of by a couple. She ended up going back and forth about whether she was going to put that child up for adoption. The child did end up going up for adoption. You've got a healthy, beautiful baby today that's alive because she went through that. And I pray for her all the time because, she's still troubled. She still has bipolar, okay? And she still went through a traumatic experience. But she's very clear on the fact that at least I don't have to go through my life with the guilt and shame that I killed my own child. Right. And at least I know that when the chips were down, I did the right thing. Right. And I made the right moves. And that's something that she gets to carry with her forever, is knowing that she declared life and she brought life into the world. And she was also extremely complimentary of that couple who took care of her, because she said that she did go off of her meds for the time that she was pregnant, and that she did go quite crazy. Not to mention just the regular craziness with pregnancy. And she said, she put those people through hell. But they loved her, and they took care of her, and they saw her through the whole process. That is some of the type of pro-life work. Now, the legislation is always important. Pro-life legislation is extremely important. But that is all, I think, some of the most beautiful pro-life work I can think of, is actually helping a woman who's in a struggling situation like that and is choosing life, choosing not to have the abortion, and taking care of her and helping her do it.
Let me ask you a question. We are seeing some of the political events unfolding where people are digging in to codify their pro-abortive legislation. Think about it for a minute.
And at the other end, and states, there are some states that are passing more than one bill. There are some states that are looking at going in and passing one bill like you and I would support, okay? But then they're worried that that will get thrown out by the Supreme Court, but that maybe they uphold something.
Well, but here's the thing. You're going to see an increase in judicial activity on both sides, because on the conservative side, we want to take it to the Supreme Court, okay? But here's the question. Most conservatives would, across the board, say we want to repeal. They say repeal as if it's a law. But basically want to reverse Roe v. Wade. Okay. Now, they don't think past that, I don't believe, because if that were to happen tonight, we would have 50 battles to fight.
We'd have 50 battles to fight. And it would vary from state to state what laws would be in effect, because all Roe v. Wade did is take the right away from states to outlaw abortion. Prior to that, it was a states' rights issue, and each state decided for itself. It would probably take a personhood, a pro-life constitutional amendment to actually stop abortion all over the country.
Right. The Roe v. Exactly. That's a very cogent remark, because in terms of strategy, overturning Roe v. Wade is only the first of many steps. Okay, if you want to eliminate abortion, California is never going to outlaw abortion. Ain't going to happen. Okay?
No.
So we've got a struggle ahead, but what bothers me spiritually is that the Roe v. Wade case basically gave the blessings of the United States government on abortion. So, we print on our money in God we trust. I saw a very disturbing video last night where a woman was in some kind of town hall setting, and I don't know what all the events that precipitated all this, but she had a flag in her hand and was reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and she was booed down. I mean, just my blood was boiling. There's an element out there that we're going to have to find a way to address. If you just make it illegal, if you overturn Roe v. Wade, that's not going to eliminate abortion.
No.
At the end of the day, what abortion is a spiritual problem. See, here's what it is. God has some rules about sex. God's not against it, okay? But he puts it in the confines of a situation that is healthy.
Yes.
for the mother, the father, and the child.
Yes.
But we just want to do things our way, so we make a decision to say, "Oh God, you're just a cosmic killjoy. I'm going to do things my way." And then when the consequences of that come around, we want to evade, avoid, or obfuscate, or minimize, or marginalize the consequences. And it's a spiritual problem. Okay, if you sin, there's a price.
There's a price.
There's a price. Okay. And we just don't want to pay it. So this spiritual problem is as old as Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's a different context, but it's the same old thing, Roger. We make choices, and our choices have consequences. And I'm tired of hearing how bad pregnancy is. That it's a traumatic life. There are too many. Well, these arguments. There's nothing new in these arguments that we're bringing forward. But let's simplify it. God has a way of doing things. And we don't like his way. We choose our way, and we want to make it lawful to do so, legal. So no, the answer is no. I was wondering.
There's nothing more Christian than this. And if you look at Christ, and you look at when Christ prayed, and Christ said, "Father, not my will, but yours be done." And if you combine, recently in some of my meditations on Scripture, I've looked at both, when I would read the Sermon on the Mount, and I would read, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, because theirs is the kingdom of heaven." For many years, I only understood that on one level, kind of to mean humility. Okay, humility. But when you think about "Blessed are the poor in spirit," and then you read Christ saying, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." No, it's "Blessed are the people who have literally given up their spirit to God." They don't have a right to kill children. They don't have a right to not do the will of God. They have a choice, but it's not a right. And they've literally handed their spirit over to God. And that's what we're going to have to do in this battle. And we're going to have to be ready for it. It's spiritual warfare, Mark. I know you have your favorite scripture about putting on the armor of God, but it is going to be spiritual warfare in fighting this battle, and in trying to get good, solid pro-life legislation passed, trying to block pro-death legislation, and I can tell you, although I'm not real big on the boycott movement in general, I wouldn't spend any money in New York right now. Just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't give New York my dollars right now.
Yeah, and it's a slippery slope. I was talking to somebody at work today and told them I'm not going to buy Nike. I'm not going to watch the NFL. And I'm sure they'll do just fine without me, but I have a conscience. The problem here is once you start making consumer choices like that, it's a real slippery slope, because all companies invest money in all kinds of things that once you find out, for example, I used to sell insurance, and the insurance company was very profitable, paid high dividends. Well, one reason is they owned the company called American Brands. Well, that's liquor.
There you go. There you go. Mark, a lot of people want to boycott a Gillette right now, and we had a show where we talked about this ridiculous new Gillette ad and everything. Gillette's owned by Procter and Gamble, Mark. You almost can't live in this society without buying products made by Procter and Gamble. Okay.
Yeah.
But I will tell you something, and we should probably wrap it up pretty soon, because we're starting to veer off topic a little bit, which we'll always do. Yeah. We'll start off in one place, and you and I can go on for hours and hours. But on the subject of boycotts, and on the subject of what we talked about a couple of weeks ago on our show, I did put out a tweet, and I put out some Facebook stuff to the Dollar Razor Club today.
Uh-huh.
And the Dollar Razor Club is doing advertising that you can tell, if you look at it, it's very geared towards men.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like they've got some reasonably priced good razors, and They try to set you up with home delivery and this and that and the other. And I put out some tweets and I put some stuff on Facebook saying, look, guys, I'm really impressed with your advertising campaign, and I'd really like to try your product. And I know you might want to stay out of controversial issues, but in light of the fact that your major competition has joined in the war on men, I need you guys to tweet something like, "We stand with men," or "There's no such thing as toxic masculinity." As soon as you do that, I think that I and millions of other conservatives are ready to give your razors a shot.
Yeah. When you say there is no such thing as toxic masculinity, I agree. There is a thing as toxic behavior.
Yes. Yes, okay. There is.
And a lot of the identity politics and the surrounding struggles get down to trying to put things in a box, you know, because it's simple. You know, I don't make as much money because I'm a female. I can't wait. Maybe we'll dedicate a show to this, the gender pay gap. Well,
and the myths about it.
I find it very humorous or contradictory at the abstract level. Because if let me get this right. I made this comment at work and nobody quite understood it. If you are the victim of gender disparity in the workplace, why don't you simply identify as another gender and fix it? Since there is no such thing. You can't have it both ways, but they literally want it both ways. They want to say that it's not binary, yet they say there is a gender pay gap. Well, wait a minute.
And all these things that we're talking about, all of it, and then to bring it back to abortion. I've seen people in the press sometimes when a pro-lifer will bring up abortion in response to something. They'll say, oh, well, abortion doesn't have anything to do with this. Well, yes, it does. First of all, the violence begets violence, and I can think of no greater violence than the slaughter of innocent unborn. A lack of respect for human life causes violence and causes problems in society. And here we are taking a whole class of people and denying them the right to life. Let's take it a little deeper. Think about certain people that we used to honor in society or respect. Now we pass laws making it okay for a mother to go to a doctor and have her unborn child killed. There used to be a common saying, as safe as a baby in its mother's arms.
Yeah.
Well, the most dangerous place in America, statistically more dangerous than any city, is the inside of a mother's womb.
Yeah.
That is incredibly sad. We talked about personal responsibility and people not wanting to have to take responsibility for their actions. There is not a moral or spiritual problem in the United States of America that is not made worse by abortion.
Yeah, I also get, I don't want to use the word amused, but nobody seems to notice. Planned Parenthood's slogan, their brand, is every child a wanted child. Okay, now let's think about that just a minute. In other words, you're admitting that it is a child.
Yeah.
Not every fetus a wanted fetus. Not every lump of tissue a wanted lump of tissue.
I think they would say, oh, we're not admitting that. We're saying if it's not going to be a wanted child, let's cut it off before it's a child. Well, which of course is a nonsensical argument.
It is, because they're saying every child a wanted child. So what then? It's just the irony. People want it both ways.
But Mark, let's get the old days are over. The days when the left, and again, it simplifies things because they're not talking about making abortion safe, legal, and rare anymore. You're now even seeing arguments that abortion is good, that it's the proper thing to do. You're hearing arguments about it in terms of controlling the quote-unquote overpopulation problem and global warming.
Well, I would suggest to those advocates that suicide might be a better idea. Why don't you kill yourself if you're so concerned about the global community and overpopulation?
Well, they're in favor of suicide too, but just not for them. Okay, right. It's kind of like in communist countries, and with communists in general, Mark, when you meet communists, you know what you never meet? You never meet somebody who wants to be the quote-unquote worker. You meet people that think of themselves as an idea guy that's going to be sitting around coming up with ideas.
Right, an intellectual.
Or a leader, they're going to be leading. Or, oh, I'm disabled, so I can't work. Okay? They put all this value on the worker, but there are no communists that want to be workers. Okay? And that's what ends up getting imposed.
They want to be an advocate for the worker. I saw an interesting, I forget who it was, I want to say Louder with Crowder. But it pointed out another irony of the left is AOC, basically he took a soundbite where basically it's immoral to have that kind of money. You know, millions and millions and millions of dollars in income. But yet you want to tax those that do. In other words, your system collapses without the very thing you say is immoral in the first place.
Here's the problem. Yeah, no, here's the problem.
That doesn't add up.
If you outlaw billionaires, you will quickly not have any millionaires. If you have no millionaires and no billionaires, you're not going to have jobs.
Yeah.
Poor men don't hire people for jobs.
Well, here's an argument that I seldom hear, and this I can tell you this from my personal testimony. Sometimes people would ask me, you know, why'd you go in business for yourself? And I would give them a candid, honest answer that they would take it metaphorically. I couldn't get a job. We live in and eventually, you know, I found a way to employ myself because I was the only person that would hire me.
There you go.
No, actually, I got hired a lot of times. I was the only person that wouldn't fire me.
There you go.
But we live in a country and say, well, we need jobs. We need jobs. Well, why don't you open your own business? This is this is America. You can actually do that. But no, you want to collect unemployment. You want to get food stamps. You want to be a dependent on everybody else. Where is the drive that used to exist to be independent?
Right. Right.
Okay.
Well,
be
Mark,
somebody be that person that others depend upon. You know. All right. Roger, if you don't mind, stay connected because we got a lot of tweaking to do, and I need a guinea pig. And I'm going to see if one of the questions I have, and I would like you to, you'll be able to hear me while I go on set by myself. The question is, can you be heard when I'm the right there, okay? I am learning as we go. I know that the audio disappeared for a while. Thank you and say that again, Roger. Okay, now what we just found out, folks, is that was a little test. Roger is still connected, but you didn't hear him. I heard him here, but you didn't hear him out there. And I quickly muted my mic before you heard that. Okay. Roger heard that. Okay. But folks, I can't begin to tell you just how much horsepower we have right here, and I am learning how to harness that horsepower, and it's going to take a little while, but all I can promise you in any event, they can't hear you, and I'm going to switch it over to the buffer.